So, going live again, and today I want to talk about a question that should be answered and put to rest. And if there's a rebuttal, please, I would love to hear it. So, if libertarianism, objectivism, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, essentially it's objectivism because all political conclusions are based on some kind of philosophical conclusion behind the nature of man. It would be to say, why have this kind of political system? For what reason? In communism, it's because men are evil and that they will deceive each other. In capitalism, it's that man has the right to pursue his own course of happiness. So let's take it to the basics, right? Why? Let's directly answer that question. Why isn't it predominant if it is the correct philosophy which coincides with life and reality? Okay. Well, you need to consider the conditions necessary for freedom. During any communist revolution, even if you had a libertarian government in place that would not allow the abuse of man's rights or any discrimination on the rights of man, massive bloodshed, massive. So one thing that needs to be recognized is you can't have a free government, even if a free government's elected, not elected, but claimed by a dictatorship, right? Even if it's claimed by force with the true right motives behind the nature of man, right? If someone were to really fight their way into forming a government, regardless of the consent of the people, and say, listen, these are your rights. No one violate these rights. No welfare, none of that. You're on your own, okay? No one is obligated to take care of you. Even if that happened, then 50% of the people, which is kind of the United States today, were on the left and were for some kind of restriction other than the natural restrictions on man. It wouldn't be possible. There's only 2 police officers for every 1,000 people in the United States. Every scenario says that if there were a revolution, the government, in all cases, would collapse. All cases. There's only 5 power stations in the United States. You shoot those down. They're not guarded because it would cost too much. You shoot those down, the whole power grid goes down. There's tons of examples. Most of the military is conservative. That's a little controversial. Okay. But I much rather take it to the basics. Okay. And that is that you need a condition, okay, for freedom to be possible. There's no way 20% can uphold 80% of the population. Because even think about it, many times we refer to communism working in a village-like environment, right? Well, when I look at that, and I thought about it today, that's not really communism. Where's the commissars when you talk about a village? Where's the police? There are no police. What they're really saying when they say communism works in a small village, what they're really saying is anarcho-capitalism, essentially, right? You don't have any force being initiated in a village-like environment. And the reason that it works is because the community is so small that you actually have men that respect each other. Everyone's neighborly, okay? In a city, it's much different. But if you're talking about a small village, essentially you're proving that capitalism can work without any force at all, okay? Everyone carries their own weapons, right? That's kind of how a village is. Most of the people are farmers, so a lot of self-sufficiency. And today, a lot of people can grow their own farms without a problem. It's actually easier than ever. But there's one statement that I said on my media, and I'll reinstate it. The reason it's not the predominant philosophy in the world is because some men just don't view man as a heroic being. That's the answer, right? How does election happen? It happens through the individual choice of individual men. Okay, that's how election into government happens. So if most of the population doesn't believe that man is a heroic being that should live for his own happiness, you're not going to get that government, regardless if it's the correct form of government, right? This is why many of the Greek philosophers avoided the crowds. They avoided the public debates, because to them they were debating with fools, animals. Okay, please don't take that in the literal sense, all right? But that is for lack of a better word. So, I mean, that's the answer. I don't know what else to tell you. It's that some people just don't view themselves as heroic in any sense. If someone believes that others have to be there to be a safety net for them, well, then you're not going to get a free society. But now, some people like to assume that the reason libertarianism or objectivism isn't the predominant philosophy is because of some kind of logical fallacy, which is a huge contradiction in terms when the whole left philosophy is a fallacy. Because if someone on the left were to take their philosophy to the extreme and to discover the philosophical background behind it, they would end up on the right. Because you look at man in his natural nature, right? You look at a man, just one man on a desert island. Who is there to support him? He has to find his own food, his own water. And people are like, well, that's extreme. We're living in a society. What's a society? Have you ever looked up the definition of civilization? An advanced form of morals. Since the beginning of man, we've been killing each other using force, okay? For a long time, man survived by the biggest stick. That was the ruler. Is that an advanced form of morals? Gotta ask yourself that. Is that advanced? What do you mean about that? The man with the biggest stick ruling. That's essentially where this country's heading right now. And I went into the red flag laws. That's essentially one big step towards totalitarianism. The ability to call the cops on your neighbor for suspecting, right? No evidence, suspecting an illegal firearm. That's the first step to disarming people with arbitrary power. It's arbitrary. We have a constitution, and the Constitution's intent was to protect rights, to protect the innocent, and, that allows the initiation of arbitrary power. And I don't refer to the Constitution very often when I refer to rights. I don't believe they derive from a piece of paper or from God or any of that. They derive from reason, right? Because you need to go back to what is the premise of why man should be free? What's the basic premise? And it's that man survives in proportion to his rationality. There's no changing that. Man will always survive in proportion to his rationality. And it's no use to manipulate that, because that only creates a downward spiral, right? When rationality is no longer the goal to life, when you replace that value through manipulation, right? It's not natural. When you replace it through force, that the man who cheats, right, who tattles on his neighbors or other people, the man who supports legalized stealing, legalized force, those are the ones that win in a totalitarian state, okay? To any extent, right? Even if you start to initiate some, it snowballs. It doesn't matter, because it begins to snowball. The moment that reward system is there, you compromise the rational faculty of the brain, all right? Naturally, in a free society, man will survive on the basis of his values, because some values do lead to life. That is the premise of objectivism, that there are correct values, there are validated values. And you see that very strongly on the conservative side, which takes it to the extreme sometimes of trying to ban drugs and whatever, and avoiding the logical fallacy in that supply and demand will make the problem worse. That's really what it is. It's ignorance to the logical fallacy. They're no different than the people on the left when you take it to that side. You know, just to show my non-bias to the right, I've actually attended a Republican Party meeting before, and I was very disgraced with the intent of the party. I asked them, "What are you guys trying to do?" And they're like, "Well, our goal is to elect Republicans. What is the value being perpetrated?" Huge problem, very big problem with society today, in that people aren't really running on real values. And that sort of goes into the answer of why libertarianism isn't predominant. It's a lack of that understanding of man's nature. Today is just winning for the sake of winning. Well, that's like making a lot of money just for the sake of a lot of money. No, there's a real reason why people go after money. It's survival. It's material happiness, well-being in the material sense. Okay. And is it evil? Well, how could you call something evil when it's the very thing necessary for man's life? Essentially, those who call money evil are advocating suicide, that we should just put down value altogether because selfishness is wrong. It's only wrong when it extends into someone else's pocket. But when selfishness is left to oneself, it's actually a virtue. Because what you get out of selfishness, when it's contained within the rights of man, is virtue. You get self-reliance, independence, self-sufficiency. Are those not amazing things that belong in a society? Should we all be dependent, reliant, um, not sufficient on oneself? Are those the correct virtues? You need to ask yourself, are those conducive with life? So the whole premise of communism is very flawed in terms of human nature. Well, anyways, I'm a very open-minded person, and I love to converse with people. So please do state your opinion below, and if you would like me to elaborate on anything else. Thank you for watching.